Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to an instant reaction edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as a very furious 40-20 this week. Joining me to break down the round 2 loss against the Penrith Panthers is my good mate, 60s. Big fella. There's a lot to be said and very little to be said in some ways too. But how are you faring after the Eels went down by 8 tonight?
Mate, I've only got one thing to say. Just hit it. Hit it.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Yeah, I think that sums up this game, 60s, on a night where the Parramatta Eels had a confluence of terrible luck when it came to injuries, with Bailey Simonson being ruled out very early in that fixture, I believe in the 3rd or 4th minute, due to a high tackle that was penalty sufficient, by the way, rubbed the player out of the game with a swinging arm to the head, followed by poor Kelma Tuolungi, who came on as the replacement, dislocating his shoulder in the second half. The Eels were then compounded by not one or two, but an absolute litany of terrible calls that paved the way for Penrith to get back into the game and seize an 8-point lead and eventually hold on to it to win. Sorry, I'm slurring my words. Before we get too much further, 60s, we are fired up with that McEnroe call. A quick shout out to the sponsors of the podcast. It feels awful to put them in this sandwich of white hot rage, but yeah. Big Swing Golf North meeting star partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta. Be assured that we're not directing any ill feelings towards them. We love those guys on both accounts. But how did you see it, mate? Like the amount of terrible calls, whether it was from Klein, whether it was from the bunker, from an Eels challenge where there was clearly no knock on, but it was ruled that we couldn't overturn the on-field decision, through to, foul play that went through with a slap on the wrist. I don't know where to begin. Where do you want to start with this one, mate?
Look, let's just say it straight out. The match was decided early in the game with a foul shot, like a shot across the head by a bloke who then doubled down with a trip.
Yep.
Not long after. So he stays on the field, right? The Eels are a player down, and not just a player down, but a back down, when teams just don't keep backs on the bench, right? It's rare that a team has a back sitting on the interchange bench. This is an instance where you have to be allowed to have 5 players on the interchange, where if a player is taken out for foul play, and let's be very clear, because he was put on report, right? So he's put on report for a high shot. The player that he puts a high shot on can't come back into the game. Now, what happens if that's like a grand final? In all seriousness, that's literally, this is an instance where you've got a match that can be decided where a player on one team might deliberately go for a high shot, deliberately look to put a player out of the game, because it is... there are far more players that are ruled out of the game for concussion these days than were ever ruled out in the past. So and there would be no repercussions after a grand final, because the competition could be decided on something like that. Now, in this instance, well, will he get suspended? Who knows? It doesn't really matter, because it doesn't benefit Parramatta in any way, shape or form. They had to play the game one man down for a start. They had to play the game with a back rower playing in the centres, and we saw what that meant.
Another thing that was the pivotal call, right? That was the one that really defined the entire game. Kelma Tuolungi had to come into the centres, and that was the right call. I know the commentators kept going on about how they needed to put Bryce Cartwright out there, but that would be, again, Kelma was as good a centre replacement as Bryce was, and you'd be further weakening another side of the field in order to try and shore up a different part of it, which doesn't make sense. And Penrith correctly chose to, just pillage that side. It's the right thing to do. I'm not upset in that regard. That makes sense. But yeah, massive call not to even sin bin, let alone send off Luai there, which, like you said, 60s followed it up with a trip, okay, a few minutes later. And then we saw a pivotal joint in the second half where Sean Russell, the only blemish on his night, he dropped the ball, a high ball, which I thought the rule change was that you can no longer do a fake contest for the ball. You can no longer jump early to try and disrupt the catcher. And we saw, was it Taylor May or Tungor? I'm not sure. Go through.
Well, what we know is they didn't show any replays of it.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see exactly what happened. There was lots of pointing that was going on from the Eels players, but no one was. I mean, we saw tons of replays of all other incidents in the game, but we didn't see a replay of that. And yet that was pivotal in the Panthers getting possession down there and being able to spread the ball across the field for the try.
A lot was made about Reg's monster carry against James Fisher-Harris, where he absolutely demolished him, but not a word was said that Fisher-Harris actually shoulder charged Reg in that tackle and just got destroyed, which should have been a penalty. And again, in the past, I've seen that as sin bin, but not in play here. Look, the forward pass call late in that second half as Eels were looking to rally 60s where I think it was Sean Lane, Ryan Madison playing the Sean Lane maybe, or and it was a great little play down that left edge, and it was clearly backwards out of the hand from Lane. The one that really, I say really, a lot of them did. Jermaine Hopgood correctly penalised for a facial in the tackle in the first half. I copped that in the chin because that's a fine call. Like, that sort of stuff I'm happy for him to try and crack down on. We then literally had a penalty blown against us where one of our players, I think it was Bryce Cartwright, copped a facial on the last tackle to the point that Joey Lussick had to step in because it was just going so far, and then we got the penalty against us. There's just no consistency.
It was laughable, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Laughable. But I'll tell you, where I really am furious with is with a bunker call that, and you mentioned it before, where it was, and don't get me wrong, I mean, we ended up benefiting from a call that was wrong in the end there, but where it was clearly not knocked on by Gutherson, right? Clearly. And they just stayed with the feed and just said, oh, well, like we can't overrule it, but we'll let you keep your challenge. Can't overrule? I thought it was as clear as anything that the call was wrong. But, oh, mate, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's, there were things that, we could have done better, but by the same token, we're expecting people to be playing out of position and
the one play that I think we need to put our hands up and really own defensively was the Moses Leota try. One, again, it came with the disrupted left edge where they ventured down there initially and managed to get that sort of half break with Kelma Tuolangi making the tackle, but couldn't wrap up as the guy fell forwards, allowing the ball to be promoted again. But yeah, we were really weak through the middle as the ball came back that way. But geez, the handicap was stacked against us tonight, and you don't like to make excuses, and Lord knows that Brad Arthur is a coach that refuses to put accountability on the officials in public channels. That has been, as frustrating as it's been for fans, that has been one of his big calling cards in his tenure as Eels head coach. So I don't expect that to change tonight as we record, and I expect his press to go to air, sometime while we are recording. But yeah, the cards in this deck were stacked against the Eels. They had awful luck on awful luck. We now need to really wait nervously about the outlook for Kelma. Dislocated shoulders can be a few weeks to something much worse, depending on the extent of the damage to the supporting ligaments and tendons. For Bailey Simonson, that was a Cat 1, I believe, which means it's a mandatory 10-day stand-down, isn't it?
I think it is.
Which means the Eels now, I suppose Hayes Dunster comes into the team. Bailey Simonson, was that or at wings? They just bring Hayes back into the team, I imagine. So beyond that, though, if anything happens in the back line, it is absolutely dire. So,
well, we were talking about what this situation would be if the Eels were to lose players, backline players, and it would appear that the perfect storm is brewing again, just as it did last year. I mean, I don't want to be sounding too foreboding with things, but
where the cupboard is thin, if not bare
Yeah.
already, and we have circled it across the last 2 seasons, and I think it's fair to say the Eels probably haven't done the job they need to, at the executive level, to get this backline depth in position. And I know there's been a lot of headlines about Zach Lomax, and everyone's excited about potentially getting Lomax on board, but that until it happens, it is, in terms of us fans, not the actual negotiations. It is stuff of fantasy though, and it doesn't help you on a week-to-week basis. So,
and you know what? For right now, it is absolutely the stuff of fantasy because it's not happening right now. I don't know if it were to happen, and I'm saying an if. You're still talking about potentially it being a month or two away at the earliest, and even then, you'd be talking about trying to bring a bloke straight in who has spent no time with the team and expecting that to turn around. Look, and again, I don't want to sound too negative, but you're talking about, having to make these changes and to be down 2 wingers, and they're about to face one of the fastest teams in the NRL in the Sea Eagles. They're just overloaded with pace out wide.
I suppose the good news there is that Saab is out for 6 weeks, so their biggest pure speeds there can't terrorise us down that left edge.
Yeah,
still plenty of pace in their backline though.
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, it's okay. You're taking out the supreme pace there, but you're still talking about a lot more pace there than probably what's in the Panthers lineup. I mean, the Panthers, they were in a position where they had backs up against a forward and then a centre playing on the wing. And I mean, that result on the Eels' left-hand side was inevitable in that circumstance.
Oh, yeah.
So, it's, look, I'm really frustrated after watching tonight because it was, again, I think there were elements that were completely out of the Eels' control tonight. And when you have matches like that, it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. Now, I mean, it was an absolute miracle that the Eels were ahead at halftime.
Yes. I mean, full credit to the team as well to manage to pull it out the way they did in the first half. And that's what is so frustrating is that Parramatta even already handicapped early in that contest with the loss of Simonson. Penrith were really struggling to contain their attack. They had very little to answer Parramatta's goal line rating, and we saw Dylan Brown absolutely terrorising them, linking up with forwards Sean Lane and Jermaine Hopgood. But then the weight of possession, I know possession was 50-50 in this game in terms of the actual stats, but this wasn't a game of 50-50 possession. All the calls and all the luck meant that Parramatta's possession was consistently coming 5 metres off their line by virtue of Penrith having territorial advantage on the back of penalties, on the back of bad calls, on the back of just bad luck. So it's a game where the stats say it was even, but it wasn't even. So
there's possession and there's possession.
Exactly.
Now,
little big possession, big possession. It feels like.
Yeah. And what obviously transpired as the game unfolded is that all of that tough work, where what you're talking about is running uphill versus running downhill, really. So all of Parramatta's work was pretty much running uphill, which is coming off their own line. The Panthers had plenty of time where they were running downhill. And again, unfortunately, look, you're right. We have to give Parramatta plenty of praise for being able to hang in the contest, because to ultimately go down by 8 points away from home when you've got some tough calls going against you, when you're up against the Panthers, who are the 3 times premiers for a reason, and when you just haven't got the territory to end up with the game that close, there's a lot of praise that's comes their way. Look, I was feeling very dark and negative about what follows from here, but I guess the other thing is too that the Eels should feel pretty buoyed by how well they hung in there.
Yeah.
But
the ticker on display tonight, I don't think. I mean, I've already seen on social media some people questioning players and coaches, which is classic social media overreaction. Anyone that has a modicum of understanding about rugby league knows that the Eels dug their heels in magnificently tonight. Backs against the wall from 3 minutes in, up against, again, a reminder, the back-to-back-to-back champions, the Penrith Panthers, in their home opener, on the back of their shutout loss to the Storm. This, like I said, I keep saying it, stacked deck. Even if that were just the only factors, it would have been an incredible effort to lose the way they did in those bad luck circumstances before you consider all the official issues that we had. So yeah, I am proud of the boys. I'm proud of the entire team. From top to bottom tonight. I think they dug in real deep, and yeah, you could tell that they were battered and bruised out there, but they still kept. And not only they still keep trying. In that final 10 minutes, they actually had Penrith a little bit rattled when they finally got some ball. It was just that ridiculous forward pass call that took away all the impetus of the set that was going to maybe crack the game open. Eels scoring for about 8 minutes left, I think it would have been, and a chance to, build with the momentum of that hypothetical try. So, yeah, I tip my hat to all of them, 60s. Quentin Gufferson was relentless at the back on the back of, I think it was 9 line breaks to 3. And he did a tremendous job defending at the last line, cleaning up some really testing attacking kicks. You look at that back line, Penasini, 140 metres, Sean Russell, 140 metres, Dillbags and Moses both around 100 metres. So they tried their tails off.
Yeah, it was Gutherson looked like he was out on his feet by the end of the game.
Yeah.
They all did. But, yeah, it was... Man... Junior Paulo.
Well,
tonight.
Talk about the experiment. I think 2 rounds in, and I know it's a small sample size, but the results are pretty compelling. Coming off the interchange, he is looking like a force.
The impact that he made as soon as he came on, like he literally picked them up and dragged them along with him down the field, the Eels, and it was. And because Campbell Gillard was still on at the same time, they were hitting that 1-2 punch in those carries. And yeah, people might say, well, that's what we needed at the start. No, you've actually got issues in the past where people were complaining about the fact that we had a lot of impact when Junior and Reg were starting the game, but then when they went off and we had the interchange, that there wasn't that same impact. Well, now with it being staggered and there being overlap times, you've got an impact all the time from one or the other, and then you've got because of the minutes they play, an overlap where they're both on the field together as well. But you've got one or the other pretty much out there at some point in the game. So, throughout the game, rather than at some point in the game, you've got one or the other out there throughout the game.
Yes.
So, yeah, look, we could break down what was happening for each try that was scored against us. We could break down what happened for the tries that they scored. Basically, what we saw in the first half was that the Eels, as soon as they got opportunity down the Panthers' end of the field, that they were able to execute like so effectively. And it was like Penrith had no answer in that first half when we'd get down into their quarter. Second half, mate, I thought we were just like when we got into their quarter, I thought we were, even though we came close, you could see that we were gassed.
Yeah.
Like the energy levels just weren't the same. Now, I guess you have to say if you're talking about the Panthers, then they did what they needed to do. They weren't executing at their best, but you have to give the Eels credit for that as well because the Eels kept coming at them. Yeah, as you mentioned before, you have to give them their props for going to the Eels' edge that had a missing player, or player playing out of position, I should say. Well, two players out of position and a forward playing in the centre role. But, you know, I guess for them, that's a match where they look to build from, the Panthers. For the Eels, as I said, I feel a bit dark about the fact that we will now be two players down going into next week. If it does transpire as we expect, the Bailey Simonson will be out for next week because of the concussion rule. And by the same token, I do hope that the Eels take plenty out of it by, you know, how courageous that game was, given all the circumstances. So, mate, look, I don't know that there's any point really in going through some of the stats, is there?
No,
tonight?
no. I mean, like individually, we pointed out some of the players in the back line that had tremendous efforts. You mentioned Junior off the interchange, 60s, 15 carries, 155 metres. The only reason he's been credited with only 2 tackle busts is because he was carrying half the Penrith pack every run. So he was fantastic. Madison and Ofingawi both productive, 100 metres apiece. Jermaine Hop good as well. Look, across the park, the Eels, you know, busted their backsides. There is no doubt about that. That, you know, like we said, the confluence, the compounding of bad luck and bad calls, and, you know, Penrith being opportunistic because they are a fantastic team. It doesn't need to be, you know, bear reminding. They are the benchmark in this competition. And when they get those sort of chances, that sort of luck, of course they're going to be cashing in. So for the Eels, those 60s, they moved to 1-1 on the season. Their for and against didn't take a big blow by any means. It was only an 8-point loss, so well done in that regard. It does make the coming weeks difficult, though, depending on the outcome of that Tuolungi injury and how Bailey lands in concussion protocols. And right now, like we said before, the Eels can just move Hayes Dunster into the back line, you know, as cover for Bailey, and it's a fairly straightforward replacement. After that, though, it gets real concerning. You know, I don't want Lumi or Sini near first grade, which means you're looking at someone like Blaze Talangi. And Blaze is doing very good, you know, he's doing some great stuff in reserve grade, but he's still, you know, clearly a very raw prospect, and he's making, you know, the mistakes that he's meant to make as he gets better as a footballer. And you don't really want to thrust him into the crucible of rugby league at the NRL level right now. So I don't know. And we've just had a chance to listen to Brad Arthur's post-game presser alongside Clinton Gufferson 60s, and he was probably as strident in his criticism of the referees as you're ever going to get out of BA. And he mentioned that there was some calls that went against him, some bad luck and bad moments that went against him. But he's probably his biggest, if you're talking about the headline quote to come out of that, was saying along the lines that if we're going to change the rules, we need to be enforcing them, referencing what I spoke about, the Sean Russell drop, where I'm not sure if it was Taylor May or Isaac Tungo, I didn't catch which one it was, doing the fake out contest of the ball, which was one of the preseason changes, and then referencing downtown. And I think he referenced downtown both in the context of the Edwards try, where Isaiah Yeo was ahead of the kick and moved forwards on that grubber kick, as well as the general play as well. So we have to wait and see if there's, you know, frames we can catch of that on replay. But yeah, BA happy about the team's effort, understandably, and the outlook for Kelmer, as we believed, was his shoulder. But yeah, as critical as Brad is want to be against the referee 60s.
Well, do you know what? I get sick of banging on about this, about rules that come in and then they're quickly forgotten about. either rules or interpretations of rules. I'm sick and tired of having these sorts of changes and then they're just ignored, or they're ignored in particular games. And I would suggest it's going to make for interesting viewing to have a look back at a couple of these moments or other kicks throughout the game, because for BA to come out and be specific about things that he wasn't happy with, like the downtown and like the faking that you're attempting to be in the contest for a catch, as happened against Sean Russell over on that side. And we saw the players immediately protesting when that took place. So we've seen this before. We have seen this before with this particular referee.
And
first game of the year.
Yeah.
John, first game of the year last year against the Storm, there was supposed to be the new ruck interpretation. And there was supposed to be particular calls that the referee made as the ball was being played, right? Or as the players were getting up off the ruck, I should say. And it didn't happen. It actually didn't happen. And the Melbourne Storm were allowed to lay all over the ruck. They were allowed to hold the players up and slow up the play of the ball. It was a farce. It was an absolute farce. And again, we're seeing examples where, and the thing is, we saw it all through last week, the first round, with downtown being picked up. We saw it countless times last year where players were pulled up for not really going for the ball, just those fake leaps in the air to put the player off. Mate, we said it in the preview. We were talking about the dream team of officiating.
Yeah.
And
we had mentioned that.
And look, again, the other thing we should mention as well is that when we were talking in the preview, we gave plenty of raps to the Penrith team. The thing is, they don't need leg ups. They don't need for calls to go their way. They're a damn fine team, right? But when things like this happen, and especially when you get a particular player named Jerome Luai, who has escaped any sort of serious punishment during the game for a hit that has delivered a concussion and put a bloke out of the game for virtually the entire game and created an advantage for one team, who then doubles down with a trip that could very well have badly injured
a player for an pre-existing groin injury too,
Yep, absolutely. We've seen him do it before against the Eels with resorting to foul play.
On the same player too.
Semi-final, pulling Moses back out when he's running through in support for a line break. And again, nothing happened in that. Nothing to see here, the officials said. Nothing to see here. Now, we don't normally go off like this in our instant reaction. We've had our odd moments where we've been upset about officiating, but I think we're also being very fair in acknowledging another team playing exceptionally well or the Eels not playing well enough. But, mate, tonight stunk. Like, it stunk. And I know there will probably be an interesting report that the Eels will put in. It'll probably make no difference because the NRL will turn around and just keep appointing Ashley Klein to Eels games.
If we're really lucky, 60s, you might even feature in the Monday or Tuesday morning debrief for Graham Annesley, and they'll say, yeah, we got it right.
Oh, yeah.
Or more likely they'll showcase and say, no, they got it right against Parramatta. We've seen that happen a few times too.
Oh, mate,
it really sucks to sit here and look, it was you can call it a moral defeat, and it was certainly a heroic defeat, but it's so empty, isn't it? Just sitting here talking about what could have been when you have bad luck that you can't control, and not Penrith's fault too, or the referee's fault. Sorry, that's not true because Luai was the high tackling player in that regard. But let's just say that injury happens with Kelma Tuolangi and whatnot, and you account for those reshuffles because on the flip side, James Fisher-Harris, got hurt too, again committing foul play, but he got hurt and was ruled out of the game. And you roll with those punches, but what you can't roll with is when you just get bad call and bad call and bad call, and yeah, it just really sucks. And this is us speaking as fans, or us speaking as fans. Sorry, imagine how the players feel after this one. It's got to be burning, in their chests that they got done like this.
Well, the thing is, you cannot. You can talk about moral defeats, moral victories, whatever you want to term it, but it doesn't get you the 2 points. Nope. It's just like in that semi-final back a couple of years ago, there was no do-over for the Eels. There was no, second chance the next week. That was it. They're out. End of the season on a bum call. So, like with this tonight, it's the Eels are subjected to some ordinary calls, and the Eels are subjected to a couple of foul play moments. And one, as I said, I'm going to keep coming back to it. As far as I'm concerned, that shot on Simonson basically determined the match. Now, BA can't say that to his players, right? And Gutho said that in the press conference. These things happen. You got to just put things behind you, and you got to be focusing on winning. You've got a game to win. You can't be thinking about those sorts of moments. And that's right. The players can't. But as fans, we can fume about it.
Yes, absolutely, mate. Yeah, that is definitely within our wheelhouse as in our role as stakeholders of the game. We do get to whine and complain and grumble about bad calls and bad luck, and that was definitely the case tonight. That 8-point loss, and look, the Eels absolutely can still pivot from here and go on a run through Manly and the Tigers and set themselves up nicely for their first month of football. That's absolutely within their capabilities. But yeah, a chance to further extend your regular season dominance over the best team in the competition. You always want that, and the Eels probably weren't given a fair crack at it tonight, and that really, really sucks. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, mate. Well, that's probably as good a point as any to wrap up.
That wraps up
our rant.
The NRL, our
pissed off rant this week.
There was another game on tonight as well. Eels went down 24-4 in the New South Wales Cup. Zach Sandy lone try scorer for the Eels, 60s. I actually thought the Eels were the better team for most patches of play in this contest, but Lord knows they knew how to drop the ball, and they just could not. They could not convert in the red zone. So there was, again, the young guys having good games, and again there were mistakes made by young guys by the same token, and I think once again our lack of backline depth probably on display.
That's
where
that pretty much sums it up. Like completions, completions just weren't there, and if you're not going to hold on to the ball, your chances of putting points on the board are minimised. You're not putting any genuine defensive pressure on the opposition, and not much more to say about that particular game. They're really going to need to. I don't know. I don't know what the options are, because they'll probably be losing a player or two that will be moved up to first grade this week, given the injury situation and the two injuries really, the concussion and the shoulder injury. So it's going to make for an interesting team list Tuesday for you to write this week, mate.
Yeah, we're going to see some changes in the team one way or the other. And I think it's largely straightforward at this stage. I think Widdrum Greg probably comes in for Kelma, and then pending. I've seen some discussion that it was a Cat 2 failure for Bowie. I don't see how it wasn't a Cat 1. he went down straight away and was clearly concussed from the start. So if it is a Cat 2, it opens some leeway for him to maybe play next week. But if he doesn't, I expect Hayes Dunster to come in. But yeah, like you said, we'll deal with that on Team West Tuesday. As it stands, if you're listening to this before 10:30 tomorrow morning on Saturday, we will be live from Eric Tweedale Stadium in Lidcombe/Granville on the border of those districts, and there to cover the Lisa Fiala Cup in the Tasha Gale 60s. Looking forward to some good football there. Unfortunately, we won't be able to cover the Mats and Ball there in Melbourne, while the Jersey Flegg, they play at St. Mary's, which you may or may not be able to make it out to, big fella.
Yeah, I'm a chance, but it becomes a timing issue from the completion of the Tasha Gale and then the travel time from Granville out to St. Mary's. Might just be able to do it, but we'll see. We'll see.
And as always, before we wrap up with your final word, another thanks to the sponsors of the show, Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta. Unlike the officials in the NRL, you guys are ultra consistent, so thanks to you big fellas, and I'll let you sign off as always, mate.
Yeah, go you mighty Eels.